Good afternoon, everybody. As you can see, I've got my good friend Imran in with me today. We haven't done this for quite a while, so this should be fun. How are we doing, Imran? How's your day? How's your week going so far?
So far, my week's going really, really well. Obviously, I'm working on the Elementor website course, but I have got hamstring problems. So I'm actually sat here with a tennis ball under my leg, which might roll under my backside at some point. So you might see me bobbing along like this, but that's the reason why.
Fair enough. So before we go any further, let's have a little check if everybody can hear and see and everything looks and sounds okay. If you could just let me know in the comments, that would be much appreciated. And then we'll do a couple of welcomes and we'll sort of talk about quickly what we want to talk about in this particular live stream. And as always, if you've got any questions at all during the live stream that you want to get answered and involved, just do hashtag Q or hashtag question. It's entirely up to you which one you want to do. It makes it a little easier for us then to keep track of what's going on and things that we need to address. And we will try to address as many of these things as we go through the live stream. We're going to keep it to an hour because I'm conscious that Imran is very, very busy working on his course, which we'll talk about in a moment. So yeah, I want to make sure that we don't waste everybody's time. Keep it to an hour. We're all good. Thanks for letting me know that the sound and the video is okay. That's great. Thank you very much. So, Imran, before we move on and say a couple of welcomes, do you want to tell us a little bit about the course, what you're doing with it, and what the process is going with it and when you expect to release it?
Yeah, so it's the how to build a website with Elementor. So it's only really Elementor based. We did the first version or the main course last year, September, and I've realized that with developments in Elementor and how I want to take it a stage further with using CSS frameworking, better accessibility, better ways of building in a more efficient way, I felt that I can't just keep adding on modules to the old course. I need to revamp it. So I've taken on some feedback about how it's presented and how the modules were laid out. And it's all happening on the 10th of the 10th, to the 10th of October. So if you're interested, you'll see details coming out. There'll be a webinar, stuff like that. If you're not interested, go elsewhere, whatever. But no, it's an Elementor website course. But as Paul will know, because Paul does tutorials and courses as well, when you try and fit in dealing with notifications, comments, emails, current clients, potential clients, normal YouTube videos, and setting up a course, it becomes such a minefield of time, juggling so much. So I hope you like it. That's all I'll say. And great to see so many friendly people in the audience today as well.
Awesome. Sounds good. It's good to see that you're kind of going back to what you created in the past and looking to revamp it, update it, and those kinds of things. Because, creating any kind of educational content on tools like, page builders and things like that, the technology moves on so quickly. You kind of look at, like with Dave, when he released his first course, when he was sort of still working on it, lots of things changed. So it is one of those areas that it is an incredible amount of work. And like you said on your live stream yesterday, I don't think people necessarily understand how much work goes into it. It might be a 6-7 hour course, but you probably spent, 10x, 20x that actually just putting it together, let alone actually putting, sort of structuring it and getting all the things you want there and the feedback and so on.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, it's close to 3 weeks and it's still about a week and a bit left for me to produce and do. So it's nearly 4 weeks. And often sometimes when people see it come out, and we are very reasonable in our pricing as well. I can say that about all the courses, yours, mine, Dave, Jeffrey, loads of us. Sometimes people say, oh, could it not be cheaper? And I sort of look at it and go, if you only knew how much time and hours we've put in. I've got clients that want me to build their websites now. I've delayed them until the middle of October. Luckily, they're hanging around. But I've literally just shelved them a bit because I need to just put my time into this.
It is difficult to kind of keep your headspace clear to be able to focus on these and also do live streams, answer the emails, answer questions, get involved in the sort of communities and so on. It is an awful lot of work. So good luck with that, and I'm sure it'll go incredibly well.
And you've also got your course. You've also got your bricks one coming out.
I do.
Next week or the week or soon or?
Oh God! Don't put a time scale on it just yet.
It's tomorrow.
Shit. But you can take the live stream. I'm going. Okay, bye.
Yeah.
No, I haven't put a deadline on it yet because I'm focusing on making sure that I've got all the things that I wanted to do work in the way that I want them to before I'll then commit. It's planned, it's outlined, it's just now making sure all the tech works the way I expect it to, because as with all these things, you may start off with thinking this is going to be A, B, C, D, E, and then you soon find out that there's spanners being thrown in between every single one of those, and what should work the way you expect it to doesn't work the way you expect it to, and you get the idea. But yes, my bricks course will be coming out at some point in the near future, and there's also a free sort of mini masterclass that'll be coming out as well, which will be on the YouTube channel, so keep an eye out for that, all bricks related. Anyway, let's do a couple of hellos, and thank you very much for joining us kind of thing. Now, as always, if you do enjoy the conversation that we have here in the live stream, do give it a thumbs up, because it does help tell YouTube that you like this kind of content, and it gives us a reason to keep coming back and doing more and more of these kinds of things. So who do we have in today? I can see quite a few faces and names that I'm well familiar with. John, good to see you in. Janos, good to see you in. Case, good to see you as well. Ulf, Mario, JZD, Home Videos. I'm assuming you do videos. Jeremy, now I'm not even going to say this, but hi to Iceland. So I'm not going to try to butcher your name, because I'm terrible at pronouncing people's names. So I will put it on screen. It's easier. Makes my life a lot easier. Max, always a pleasure to see you in as well. Artif, shouldn't you be cleaning the cars for us? I mean, come on now. My Lamborghini's not going to clean itself, is it? You just can't get the staff these days, man. You just can't get the staff. Honestly.
No. At least he does your car, At least he does it.
He says he does. If I'm honest, I think he just farms it out to the local company that does it anyway. So we'll say no more. Anyway, good to see you in Artif. eBite, pleasure to see you here. Jeremy, who else do we have in? Sinan, good to see you in. Phil, glad you made it. Good to see the notification worked. Toby, Eddie, Lex, well done on the tutorial today, Lex, on the animation. Cool. Rahul, Farhan. Okay, K9 Striker, good to see you in as well. Okay, so let's just quickly talk about what we're going to talk about in this live stream, and then we'll get started. So there's a couple of things that you can't help but have noticed with regards to WordPress at the moment and the drama that's going on. But before we start any of that, I released a video yesterday, and Imran did one a couple of days ago about his take, and I released one of my take and so on. But one of the things that I wanted to focus on, and I think is just as important, if not more important, than the current drama that's going on in WordPress itself, if you haven't seen this, check out Imran's video and my video, is what exactly is going on with WordPress itself. Forget about the drama, but what's going on with WordPress? Because one of the points I kind of raised in my video yesterday was that I kind of feel like in certain ways, and I know it's free, so let's not go down that route, that WordPress is kind of failing a big portion of its user base at this point in time, in the direction it's taking, and maybe the leadership that's behind it, and those kinds of things. I mean, what are your thoughts? What do you feel? Do you feel WordPress is in a good place, or do you feel like it's kind of like it doesn't really know what it wants to be right now?
Yeah. So, look, WordPress is an amazing platform. People have heard of it. People use it. But I do think we're going to get to a point whereby it's starting to become stagnant. And even though there are developments and there are things happening, and we've spoken about this on live chats before, we did one about, 6 or 7 weeks ago, and some people were like reacting to that and felt we were too critical and negative. But what we were trying to get across was that in terms of Gutenberg, in terms of the way it operates, in terms of how, is it a content management system? Do custom fields need to be included? Yes or no? There's all these little things that we feel like should have been dealt with and done ages ago, but it always feels like it's chugging along, it's developing, but when you think about how much money there is on the table and there are people developing it behind the scenes, it always feels like, where is it going? And I don't often know where is it going to be in a year's time or 5 years' time. And so they're the conversations. And even though we had one, and some people reacted in a bit of a critical way to it, they're having the same conversations. That's what I found quite funny. We were kind of outed for speaking, but then so many others are having similar conversations about the same thing, like where is WordPress going? And at one point I just want to make, because this was mentioned by someone who was at WordCamp US, and this is something I've wondered as well. He said, in terms of the attendees and a lot of the people they see getting involved, they're all kind of aged in their mid-30s. Now, that might be because a lot of youngsters don't want to pay and go to an event. They would prefer to do it virtually and online, which I kind of understand. But are we going to get to a point where, for us 20 years ago, WordPress was like the new thing, the new kid on the block? And it didn't just, it didn't just come along and die a death and fall off a cliff. It actually, it became something we could use and build our websites, build client websites, make income, revenue businesses. Are we slowly going to get to a point where maybe in 20 years' time, we're all going to be a lot older, we might have retired or not be bothered about doing stuff. We don't know where the world will be. But is it going to become something whereby WordPress just, it's not the new kid, well, it's no longer the new kid on the block. I mean, unless it develops and evolves, that's the one, unless it develops and evolves in a better way, new people aren't going to want to come and join up. And something we are going to talk about later on, obviously, about, some of the fallout or whatever. Right now, the noise in WordPress, it's not a great magnet for new people. If right now you said to someone, hey, we're going to build your website on WordPress, and they just happen to be on Twitter, the noise we see, it's not a great advert, is it? But anyway, sorry, I digressed there. But yeah, I feel like WordPress is a little bit rudderless. It doesn't know where it's going. It's like it's got to a tunnel, and there's all these options it could take, and it's kind of like, well, where do I go? What is my absolute focus? So it's great to know that, they might do X, Y, Z, but I would prefer to know, what are you going to do in the next year? Where are you going? What are you going to do with Gutenberg? What are you going to do with the interface? What are you going to do with WooCommerce? All these little things make me get excited. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I think a rudderless ship does kind of sound... Although, I don't know if it's rudderless or if it's the opposite. It's a dictatorship of this is what we're going to do. Whether you like it or not, that's what it's going to be. But the question I posed yesterday myself was, are we, as in people like you, people like myself, people in the sort of circles and the communities that we're involved with, our own communities and so on, are we actually the target market for WordPress? We've had this conversation about other tools out there like Elementor and so on. But are we actually the target market? Because it does kind of feel like WordPress has a crisis of personality. It doesn't really know what it is. If you look at the actual Google search result and the meta for the WordPress homepage, it says part of it says it's a content management system. But is it a content management system? Because as a lot of people have already brought up, surely a content management system would have things like custom post types, metadata, all that kind of thing built in. And I know people go like, but this would kill the ecosystem that builds tools like Metabox and ACF and so on. No, it wouldn't, because no one's expecting it to compete to the complexity and the level that they bring to the table. People want... people want the fundamentals, those kind of things. To be able to create a custom post type, typical standard meta fields, like... WYSIWYG editors and so on. They don't need all those relationships and things like that. That's where you bring in these extra heavy lifting tools. But also, WordPress, as you brought out in one of your videos not that long ago, has meta fields in it, has custom meta fields as part of it. It has had for years. But WordPress is 20 plus years old now? So pretty longer than that, actually, pretty way longer than that. But you're kind of thinking these other tools didn't exist then. They came about because these are areas that are missing. And I know that WordPress, behind the sort of thing is that they want to foster this sort of core and then allow these other tools to build on top of it. And that's great. But you can't kind of call yourself a content management system but not have the fundamental tools that a CMS requires. So if you're a blogging platform or a publishing platform, which I think it also calls itself, don't also call yourself a content management system. It's this kind of crisis of personality identity, doesn't really know what it actually wants to be. And I think that confuses a lot of us as to, if you're going to be critical, are we allowed to be critical because it's not saying it's this one thing, but we want it to be this one thing? Or are we critical because it says it's something, but doesn't give us those things that you need to be one of those, to be a CMS, for example? That sounds a bit obscure, but you know what I mean. You know where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I do. No, and you're absolutely right. And I know just that point you made about why don't we have a proper custom field facility inside of WordPress because they don't want to affect the ecosystem. I hate hearing that, because for me it's like, give us something, and even though it might be basic, just give us something that you can use while you're using WordPress, for instance. It's a bit like WooCommerce subscription. I have such a thing about the fact you got to pay $2.99 a year just to activate subscription. Like, it's a ludicrous amount of money to pay for it. And I did see a tweet a while ago where they're considering including it in standard core WooCommerce, which would be great. But then I feel really sorry for everyone who's been paying $2.99 a year for using it. But in terms of custom field, just give us the basics. And if you feel like you want more, you might go to ACF. Because you could argue, well, why do you have ACF? I mean, you could use pods, you could use meta. There's so many different choices. There's Cube WP. There's choices and things you could use. So to say by including it in WordPress, you're going to kill off all those other plugins, well, no. Because ACF, I think, I might be wrong, but I think they're the market leader when it comes to custom fields. But that hasn't stopped other companies coming along and going, well, we're going to do it a little differently and we're going to do X, Y, Z. So competition and variety is totally fine. So I just think I find it laziness. You could argue that they haven't got enough developers or whatever. I personally think it's nothing to do with that. I think it's just a decision making you make. And I know many of us have spoken a few times about like AI in Elementor and Breakdance and other tools. And I've always said AI is okay, develop it, but focus more on the page builder and doing good stuff there. And I just feel like with WordPress and Gutenberg and all of that stuff, shift your focus to get those things right. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I don't even know what I'm saying half the time, but yeah.
Well, I think we've got to go back to one of the sort of points that was raised in the sort of whole argument about, that you've got plugins to do all these different things to extend it. And I do agree that they are great that they can do that. But the argument is that, they would now sort of kill off a big portion of this kind of plugin market that actually create tools like ACF and so on. And my counter argument to that is, well, surely the whole point of actually them creating Gutenberg and full-site editing effectively aims to cut off the reliance upon things like Elementor and Bricks and tools like Generate Blocks and so on. Isn't that all kind of allowing you to build on top and create pages, posts, templates and so on? So you kind of you can't use the argument to say, well, you shouldn't have custom fields in it because that would kill off Metabox and ACF and Toolset and so on. But on the other hand, it's like, well, it's all well and good to be able to have Gutenberg and full-site editing because that's going to have no effect upon theme builders. It's not going to have no effect on page builders or block tools and things like that. It's kind of it's a hollow argument, in my opinion, when they say things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so that was my sort of thing. What exactly are they? What do they think they are?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to add to that is that here's how I see it, okay, is that look at all the car companies out there. They all build cars, 4 wheels, most of them, and a car, right? Someone might then do something a little bit different that someone else is already doing, right? Someone somewhere must have been the first company that introduced, sorry, God, the cat's face is now sniffing the camera. Someone must have been the first one to go and put aircon in a car, right? Or climate control. There would have been someone, okay?
Mercedes.
And then
usually.
someone else, might have been actually. And then someone else would have done something similar or whatever, okay? It then makes the others do something else, okay? So if WordPress went and did better page building, custom fields, WooCommerce subscriptions, they just made it a better package. Somehow they even, made emails. Like, why are we still having to use SMTP, whatever, plugins or solutions to make sure emails go out of WordPress? Like, come on. We shouldn't have to, be mucking around with doing all of that, we still have to do that. But if they made it better, and if Elementor or anyone else was like, oh no, Gutenberg is actually really good now, people are using it, it would make other plugins, other page builders now go, right, we have to up our game. Because we want you to still pay for our license. Cat's trying to get behind me now. Damn, this is awkward when you have cats in your room. It's going to make other plugins now have to do something extra or a bit different. So it creates, for me, healthy competition. It helps to make the other product better. Because without picking faults or anything like that, Elementor were the number one. Then you had other page builders come out. bricks came out, breakdowns, all these things came out, and then it kind of makes Elementor and others go, right, we've now got to do as good as or better, or you know what? Yeah, we will now get the flex container done. Yeah, we will finally do the loop grid, because maybe before it wasn't on the radar because they were like, hey, we can get away with doing what we're doing. So I just think with WordPress, right, the team behind the scenes, whatever, spend the time, a year or two, develop it, give us that little bit of extra, and then if the other plugins get offended because they feel like you've taken you're now doing what we were doing, they will now have to do something a little bit different. Like ACF, right? I'll end on this bit. ACF were not bothering with post types, right? They were just custom fields. And then they kind of probably realized, well, you know what? Why are we not offering custom post types? Why are people who want to do ACF or custom fields having to install a separate plugin? Because there's other companies coming out like Pods and whatever that have got the post type and the field. Damn, we're losing a bit of our market here. So what do? They went and included post type into the custom fields. They probably could have done that ages ago, but they didn't. And then suddenly they realized, yeah, we'll up our game. And I just feel like that's what WordPress need to do.
Okay, yeah, I can't disagree with you on that front. I think the other thing that is kind of coming more and more about now is the quality of the actual way that WordPress itself is built. I don't want to stick on this too long, but a comment here, which has kind of been echoed in lots and lots of times, is about how WordPress itself, especially the database side of things, is not really geared towards the types of sites that are being built these days. Actually, like much bigger sites that are being built on it with maybe tens of thousands of posts. The whole fact that so many of the content pieces are inside a database table that really doesn't need to be there. And you've probably seen yourself. It's very easy for that database to grow huge with not that much information on a site. Once you install a couple of different plugins and revisions and things, it all very quickly mounts up. This is the whole benefit of using something like CCTs from Crockerblock Jet Engine, or to look at some of the tools that allow you to sort of strip out the data. I mean, Metabox allows you to sort of create your own dedicated tables for your content and so on. Yes, there's negatives to work in that way, but there's also plenty of positives. So instead of having to go and search multiple records to find the answer to one specific piece of output, it finds one record in one database table. That means that everything is faster to operate, all those kinds of things. Now, you take, like, for example, Divi. I don't know what kind of quality you're going to end up with, but at least they kind of realize, okay, we're at the end of the road now. If we keep going, we're just basically piling crap on top of crap on top of crap, legacy on legacy on legacy. So what do? We have one choice. Two choices. We either kind of carry on going that way and it's just going to make things worse, or we refactor and we try to go, we've learned a lot in the last 15 years, however long. Now we need to go back and say, we need to sort of start this again. I know that's not an easy thing to do, but if there's that much money being pumped into the project, then surely at some point you've got to think, for the future of the project, we need to do something. You can't keep just putting bandages and plasters on top of things and hoping to God that it all carries on working. And I'm not a coder anymore at all, but the number of comments that I've seen that people say, when you actually go into starting to actually look at the code for WordPress, a lot of it's an absolute bloody mess because so many people are involved in that code base, and obviously all the legacy that they've got from years and years and years of different versions and revisions and so on. All those things mean that it's a much more difficult, problematic platform where it is now, and it needs to be refactored to a certain extent. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
Sorry, I was just reading a comment. Say that last bit again. I was just reading a comment on here and it confused me. Just say that last sentence bit again.
I don't know, I've read a comment now, I've lost a train of thought.
Literally, I was reading a comment and I was focusing on that. It was,
I think my point was basically, do you think that WordPress needs to kind of go back and refactor, sort of like to go back to sort of the basics and start again in regards to certain aspects, like the database structure, the way it's built, the code, and so on?
So this is like the chicken and egg scenario. And the analogy I'm going to use is Elementor. And I'm sorry if I keep using that. if you could go back in time and redo how the Elementor coding and how, everything, the class system and how everything, is very convoluted in how it is, it'd be fantastic and it'd be less bloated. And I know they're working on things behind the scenes and trying to make it better, but how do you release a better product without breaking what other people are doing or have already built? And I feel like with WordPress, could they revisit the code, make it more intuitive without affecting, like, what's the stats? It said there's over 400 million WordPress websites out there or whatever. How could you do that? Because when we build websites, we create a staging site and we can do whatever we want, and then we just deploy it and boom, we're all happy kind of thing. I struggle a bit to see how they could do that without building a completely brand new product, and they almost go, right, this is WordPress version, this is the legacy version, and now we have a completely new version kind of thing. I mean, you could argue WooCommerce have kind of done it. So when version 9 came out, they changed so much in the back end. Some of my amazing code snippets don't even work anymore because they changed like end points and hooks. And it was like, what the heck have they done here? I can't even go to ChatGPT because it doesn't understand what to do with it. But I don't know. I feel like the risk factor with them, I don't know. I mean, again, like, I haven't inspected the back-end code for WordPress, that in depth. So I could be talking gobbledygook. But I feel like if they could do it, I think they would have done it by now or said, this is what we're going to do now. I feel like they would have, like, surveyed it, and gone, yeah, okay, this is the approach. So I don't know. I don't know. If anyone here in the comments knows something more, please put it out. But I feel like it could just, cause a bigger problem for people. True,
it could do. As Lex says there, I'm not a Joomla user, so don't know about this side of things, but they've got bug fixes of previous versions, 3x and so on. So they maintain it to a certain extent. I suppose you have to ask yourself, how long do you realistically support a product if that causes problems? I mean, when you look at operating systems, for example, when like Windows 10 gets to the end of life, and then you're given, like, they'll say it's the next 18 months, 2 years, whatever it's going to be, that you'll get bug fixes and so on. Or like the Affinity Suite, when you're from 1 to 2, you can carry on using it, but at some point when operating systems update and so on, it's going to fail. Surely there's a finite lifespan anyway when it comes to any kind of website, if you're using it for any kind of productive purpose. So you kind of have to think, is there a benefit to continuing with this continued legacy support right the way back to, at some point? But also you've got to kind of think on the flip side of it, take away WordPress itself. If you've ever tried to load in an old version of WordPress on let's say a newer version of PHP, not even going back to something like 5.3 or something like that, if you can do that on a test environment, it doesn't work. So there's going to be a failure point no matter what, no matter how much support you provide for it. There are external factors outside of WordPress code that influence whether it will work or not work. So taking all these things into consideration, is there not at some point where you think, okay, we've got to have a cutoff where we will support this code base for this amount of time, but after that, we recommend you upgrade? Whether that brings in some kind of migration service or something else, I don't know.
Well, I've actually just changed my tune because I've now realised if I go back to when I used to work in the NHS, when we built so many dashboards and reports and modelling software, whatever, and then Windows 2010 came along, Microsoft 2010 came along, and you had the new style Excel and all of that. Everything had to be rebuilt. We had to literally say to people, look, if you leave the report as it is, it's fine. But if we now want to update it in future and whatever, we're going to have to retransition. And there was a period where we had to rebuild everything. And I do think you could quite easily say, look, this is the legacy version of WordPress. It will be supported, but the support will start to go down, and there's going to be a better, newer version coming out. And then it's up to us to then educate our clients and go, look, if you plan not to, add in any more plugins or stuff like that, it's just basic maintenance of the website, like you're just going to do your posts and whatever, you might be able to get away with it. But we might need to rebuild your website from scratch or whatever, or like you said, some sort of transitional migration tool or something like that. Thinking about it more, it could work. It could work, but I don't think it's on their roadmap.
No.
I think if they were going to say something, they probably would have talked about that more than nourishing the farmland, as what they kind of covered off in the recent WordCamp US kind of thing. So that kind of says it all. And because they're so focused on the Gutenberg approach, that's their focus in a way. So why would they ever want to go, let's go and develop something completely new, which then affects the current Gutenberg as well then? Because you couldn't say brand new WordPress, but you still used what we've got with Gutenberg. You'd literally have to go, no, here's now the whole brand new approach kind of thing. Here's now the new way of how it's going to work. And I just don't think they've... Farhan has asked the obvious question there, but... yeah, we're going to get onto that, Farhan. We're going to get onto that. But yeah, I feel like if they were going to do it, they would have announced it at some point now. I don't think they will.
No, I don't think they will either. I think we're sort of like what we would love it to be, what we would like to see. So, Mark, to answer your question, do we say that a fresh WordPress is the way to go? I think it's an option that should be considered, because at some point that legacy code support has to give way to a product that becomes more viable to move forward. There's only so far you can push this before it gets to... It's like having an old car or an old van or something. They've changed the petrol type. There's different sort of laws to be on the road, all those kinds of things. How long do you realistically think you can run that before you're going to have to make some considerable change, like changing the engine, for example, or whatever it would be? There are so many moving parts that mean that a website works, WordPress being just one of them. So unless you go back to just creating basic CSS, HTML or PHP, and you do really simple things like that, where they can go on for bloody forever pretty much, once you start introducing database and complexities and all those kinds of things that we have with a tool like WordPress, there's only so long you can support it. I mean, going back to my own personal example, I created a CMS myself for my clients. It was a modular CMS, built it with Dreamweaver and some sort of rapid application development tools that I was using years ago. But it got to the point where it wasn't financially viable to move and rebuild version 2, because I knew how much work was involved in it to go back and actually make it work with the technologies we're moving forward. So PHP advancements, MySQL enhancements, those kinds of things. So it's not unrealistic to expect anything in a technology base to be something that has a finite lifespan before it has to be updated or rebuilt from the core to a certain extent. It can't go on forever. So that's my point. That's my take on it from personal experience, but also seeing some of the implications that supporting this legacy code and these legacy features brings to the table, and the problems that has moving forward the longer they're supported without any kind of refactoring. So that's my take on it. But yeah. Okay, let's move on to a different topic now. Now, let's not worry too much about going down the drama route just yet. We'll talk about that a little later towards the end. But the question about the trademarking WP. Now, obviously, that has an potential implication for me. But my thoughts on this, and I will pass it over to Imran in a moment. My thoughts on this would be, first of all, I would find it probably near impossible to trademark 2 single letters, because there's been companies that have tried to do this kind of thing in the past, and it's very difficult, if not impossible, to trademark something like that, because they are literally just 2 letters. Even if you did, I'm pretty sure there's a precedence that if you can prove that you've been using that name, or that part of your name is made up part of your brand, whatever it is, whether it's a business name, a brand, a registered business name, and so on, they can't just willy-nilly retrospectively go, right, anybody that now uses WP as part of their overall name for a product, service, or brand, how could you possibly then turn around and go, okay, you've all got to change your names. You've all got... Now WordPress owns that. WordPress, sure, because WordPress is a word. WP is not a word. So to try to trademark 2 letters, I think is going to be nigh on impossible if that's an approach they try to take. But that's just one man's thoughts. What's yours, Imran?
Okay, so I'm going to read out a statement by WordPress in 2021 where there was a bit of an issue regarding the use of WordPress and WP. So this is the official WordPress Foundation trademark policy from their policy page. It says, WordPress Foundation holds the WordPress trademark, not Automattic. So the WordPress Foundation holds it. The trademark policy grants use of the WordPress name and logo in specific cases. I'm not sure what the specific cases are, but you can't use WordPress as part of a product, project, service, domain name, or company name. The WordPress trademark does not cover the abbreviation WP, and you are free to use it in any way that you see fit. So basically, WP is okay. So the whole thing about WP Engine or WPTuts or whoever, WP Minute, all of these things, you can use it. It's the thing about the WordPress. So from what I can tell, okay, as far as the trademark goes, it's a very big grey area over how you use that or whether you can use that. So from what I can tell, WP should be okay.
Should be. Like I say, regardless of what they say there, I would be surprised if they could trademark 2 letters.
No. I mean, it's just it's not even an official abbreviation. It's just the word WordPress shortened down. You just took the word word in press and you just put it down. It's not like you couldn't, because there's actually another company that did kind of trademark it for themselves. I can't remember who they are now. I had it somewhere, but there's another company that's nothing to do with websites that actually had that trademarked. But even then, it was kind of thrown out because the 2-letter thing kind of thing. And WordPress don't market themselves as WP, if that makes sense, right? It's always WordPress. They don't go around saying we are WP kind of thing in a way. So, I don't know, look, I have a degree in law. I did intellectual property and consumer law and all of that. But I don't recall of like a situation with what we have at the moment whereby because someone feels like they've trademarked WordPress, they now want to take more ownership over WP. Therefore, they're doing what they're doing. But like I said in that statement, the word WordPress is not owned by Automattic. It's the WordPress Foundation. So, you know, the noise we've been seeing in recent times, which is coming from Automattic, it just doesn't fit. Because WordPress Foundation haven't come out and said anything yet. So, but anyway, look, back to what you were saying. Can you trademark the 2 letters? No.
Now, before we go any further, this is not legal advice, and what we're saying is conjecture and our thoughts.
No.
So, before anybody decides to try and sue us, we're just literally putting these things out there. We just what we think. Anyway, come on, let's not go down that route now, is it? Let's not put that out. Let's not even think that. That's just painful. We don't want companies like Silver Lake buying other companies out. We don't want venture capitalists getting involved in more page builders. That doesn't turn out well for any of us. Anyway, yeah. So I think the trademark thing. Yes, every country has different trademark laws. That's very true. And this is where the problem would arise. I would assume is that if you trademarked in the US, for example, you couldn't then go after a company in the UK that uses WP as part of their branding or their name because you don't have a trademark in that region. It's the same, I think, with, what do you call it? What's the term I'm looking for? When you create a product and you want to, what's the word for it? You want to protect the design, patent. When you take patents out, patent or patent, depending on where you are, you patent or patent that in different regions. So like you have Europe, for example, you'd have the United States, you'd have Asia, China, those kinds of things. So this is where the difficulty would arise if you even did try to trademark it, and some countries would allow trademarking those kinds of things. I would find it very difficult then to enforce that trademark in countries that don't respect that that trademark from the US, for example. Excuse me. Yeah, it's all fun, isn't it? It's all loads of fun.
It is. I mean, I actually have got, I'm just opening it up here. So I actually do have a trademark for Web Squadron that I registered. Yeah, I do. I registered it in November last year because I just started realizing, like, well, you know, I don't want anyone else opening up or trying to like use the name for themselves. So I have got a trademark for that. To be honest, though, you know, not that I'm saying I want you to go out and use Web Squadron, but you know, with what we're seeing at the moment, it's a very ugly situation in the WordPress world where it feels like people are falling out over something where I feel like there's more behind the scenes. You know, the more I dig into it, the more I find out that in like 2011, might get my dates wrong now, but I think it was in 2011, Automattic invested in WP Engine, you know, and this is when WP Engine were using those words like managed WordPress and WordPress hosting and all of that. So there was no issue then. And I just feel like the minute you become popular, the minute you now start making lots of income, someone isn't happy. And I've seen so many analogies. I did say to Paul, we're going to stay sensible here, but I've seen so many people throw analogies at me going, how would you like it if someone came into your house and ate food from your fridge? And I said, well, firstly, if I've invited them in and I've said, yeah, come and have some food, I can't then say to them afterwards, right, now pay me. I should have made that clear before they came in. You know, if you offer to give someone a lift at work, you can't get to the destination and then say, right, now give me petrol money. You should have made clear to them at the start, I'll give you a lift, but you got to contribute something or whatever, right? You know, if you invite someone around for pizza, you don't then go, right, you had 4 slices, the pizza was 10, right, do your mathematics, this is what I need from you, here's my PayPal account. So I just feel like, you know, if there was an official agreement, a contractual obligation, something that was written down, you know, chalk and slate or whatever, and it said, this is what you have to pay for the use of the name, I strongly believe that any company, WP Engine, whoever, would have paid. So I just feel like this is like a bit of jealousy, a bit of like, well, we want more from you or whatever. And I hope it settles, because I hate to see all this conflict. I hate it.
It would be nice if this has kind of put a bit of a cloud over, first of all, WordCamp US. Closing it like that, I think, was incredibly unprofessional. But also, if you've got beef, as I said yesterday in my video, if you've got beef with WP Engine or Silver Lake or any of these, whoever you've got beef with, because obviously, you know, if you've picked on that specific company, there's a reason why you chose that company and not go broad or choose multiple companies or whatever. So you kind of think, first of all, it wasn't very professional. It should have been kept completely separate. It didn't need to be aired in the public like it was. You can tell by the reactions from people at the end of that conference, after the end of that sort of speech thing, that a lot of people looked and felt kind of uncomfortable. The word from people that were there was like, it was kind of a real bummer, a real downer kind of thing on the whole thing. And if the beef is with Silver Lake, which is the venture capitalist company, I think it's venture VC company, that have bought WP Engine, to go from saying WP Engine, I can't find the quote, it's in my video where there's a little quote from, I think it was Decode, where Matt was a speaker there and they were talking, and it's talking about how basically WP Engine and what they're offering is supporting the open source kind of thing, and how more companies should be like it, to then turn around and go, right, now you're just not giving enough. There's got to be a reason that's beyond that. You can't say these are one of these best things since sliced bread, but now, because you're no longer an investor in it, and maybe you don't like the way it's gone down, you can't then just turn around and go, you, this, that, and the other. And as a lot of people said, and if you read some of the sort of comments and threads and things to do with people that were actually there, people that were around the WP Engine booth and everything that was there, Matt was having conversations with people, and there was a bit of an awkwardness about it all. Those people that work in that company in WP Engine, they're not in control of what happens inside WP Engine. Same as Most other people that work inside a corporation, especially if it's a VC-funded corporation, they don't have ultimate control. Even the sort of CEOs and so on of that company still have to answer to their VC overlords. So it does kind of come across, and that was my first thought about it, and more looking into it, I haven't changed that, is that I do think the beef is more with the venture capitalist company Silver Lake than it is specifically with WP Engine. I think they become collateral damage in the middle, and they've bore the brunt of it.
I totally agree with you on that, and I know, and I can see some of the comments coming in saying, WP Engine, they are using the name WordPress. But what I will say again, 2011, Automattic were funding WP Engine. They knew all about this then, okay? And I just feel like there's stuff that was happening behind the scenes where they allowed them to use it or whatever. There was an agreement, and it was okay. But now Silver Lake and all of that, and how much profit they're making, and the whole thing about, contributing hours back and supporting the core. I get all that. But I just feel like you shouldn't force people. You shouldn't force companies, to say that, because you use our product and you make a profit from it, you've now got to contribute back to us. Because I personally feel that whether you are WP Engine or WPTuts or Web Squadron or whoever, Bricks, Breakdance, Kevin Geary, Etch, all of these things are free marketing for WordPress, right? We could go on and talk about Etch. Is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? Investment, is it risky? All of this. But at the end of the day, the amount of noise it created in the WordPress community a couple of weeks ago was immense. I've never seen that much hype for something ever before. So, I just feel that, you could say, we should be contributing because I make a living off WordPress, building websites. I do videos. I've got the WordPress logo or the word WordPress in my cover arts or whatever. Do we need to now start paying something or get a special license agreement, like something that says, we're allowed to use it? I just see it as, by us doing what we do, we are educating people out there. When I do videos or I write something about WordPress, I stick it on LinkedIn. A business that had an idea for a website, they'll see what I've done and go, oh, yeah, we'll go ahead with WordPress. So I've steered them back to WordPress. WordPress will say, yeah, but it's open source, it's free. What do we get out of it? Well, if my client now wants WooCommerce, and maybe we go and use WooCommerce subscription, or we go and use some other tool, or maybe they're already signed up to Bluehost or whatever. There's your income train indirectly going back to you. But they might not have considered using WordPress or WP Engine, managed WordPress or whatever, if it wasn't for what we do. And I feel like that's the thing that's just getting lost, that a lot of people are failing to see. They feel like, well, you're using WordPress and you're making a profit of it. You need to contribute back money or hours. I just sort of look at that and go, grow up. You've created something and said it's free to use. I make a profit on it, and now you're jealous or you're unhappy. Well, maybe you should have said it's $1 a year, $10 a year. Maybe think like someone mentioned it, and I think it was a great idea. Look at Wikipedia. We've been using it for years and years and years. And yes, I do hate it when I go to Wikipedia and that pop-up appears. Oh, we need your money, sponsor, donate, and I'm kind of like, oh, get rid of it, which is very bad of me because I do use Wikipedia. But why don't WordPress do that? I'm on a rant now and I'm going to end it in a moment. But when we load up WordPress, don't tell me you love the screen options. Don't anyone here tell me you love to know the WordPress news and this and that and blah. The first thing I do is get rid of them all. But couldn't WordPress by default have then a pane that says, hey, if you want to donate, this is a free open source project, but if you want to donate $1, $10, $50, whatever you want to donate, people might contribute a little bit. You might only get 5% of the entire WordPress user base, but there's like 200 million for you maybe a year or whatever. So there's things they could do without throwing, I'm going to say mud, but you can imagine what else looks like mud, throwing mud at companies that indirectly help to market WordPress to bring income back to you. There's my rant done.
There's an Imran.
Yeah,
Okay.
Imran, yeah.
I get where you're coming from. I want to sort of carry on with sync with self. Contributing to open source platforms like WordPress isn't mandatory. No, we agree. No, and I don't think anyone said it is mandatory. But it's considered an ethical responsibility that benefits both the community, the reputation, and the one who's contributing. Again, absolutely agree. The problem comes into it, though, is that if you want to say, let's take that as being the gospel. If you were making money, if you're profiting as a business off WordPress, there's an ethical responsibility to put back in from working on code, whatever it's going to be. Let's use that as the sort of the benchmark here. Well, the argument then could be said that WP Engine did do that. Okay, it was only 47 hours per month, which is woeful. But they've still met their agreement, because no one and no way has it said that if you were going to do something like that as a business, and they say we'll use WP Engine as an example here, then unless there's an agreement saying you have a minimum requirement based upon some metric, whether that's the amount of money or the amount of sites that you have hosted or whatever that metric is going to be, unless that's put out there somewhere as at the point of actually setting your business up and using WordPress and allowing you to deploy it, where does that come in? How do you police that? How do you then say, okay, you've done enough, but you haven't? Where is the barometer? Where's the gauge for that? And I think this is the thing that is probably most frustrating for most people, and probably for most businesses when they read this, is, okay, first of all, is there only one way to put back? As in, if I contribute to core, as in I'm coding or whatever the case is, or bug fixing or things like that, does that then mean that that is more important than educators, people creating plugins and things to extend the areas of WordPress that are missing? For example, WP Engine, they bought ACF. And since they've had ACF, and as I said this in my video yesterday, when you had Disingenuous Brains owned it, they did nothing with it, absolutely nothing with it. A couple of bug fixes, that was about it. When you had Elliot, the original coder of it, the last year or so of his tenure with that, there wasn't really much going on there. I think he'd lost the interest in it. But since WP Engine have had it, like Imran said earlier on, they brought custom post types in, taxonomies. Should they have done it years ago? Yes, they should have. But WP Engine, this example, and I'm not defending WP Engine. Like I say, I've got no affiliation to them. I've never used them as a service or anything. I have no idea. But at least they've done more. And all those things are available for free in the free version of ACF. You don't need Pro to get access to those.
Exactly.
So are they not putting back into the WordPress ecosystem and enhancing what WordPress can do? And this is kind of what frustrates me. And one final thing before I'm on a WPTuts rant now. I've got it in front of me, but this is basically the 5 for the future. And this is kind of all ties back into it. If you don't want 5, actually, Bo, there we go. 5 for the future. So this is one thing that really pissed me off when I saw this. No, Michael, it's Disingenuous Brains. Developing WordPress derivatives such as plugins, themes, and blocks for the WordPress repository are typically not 5 for the future contributions. That, in my opinion, is shit. Because if you don't, not everybody wants to contribute to core. Not everybody's got an interest in the direction that core is taking. Core being primarily like full site editing, Gutenberg. There are lots of people out there that have no interest in that direction. So why should they contribute in something they've got no interest in, where they can contribute to actually open up options inside WordPress that are not available inside native core WordPress, but makes it a usable platform for people to get the job done, to create businesses, to enhance this ecosystem that WordPress is so proud of? You can't have it both ways. You can't go, well, okay, you don't fit into the 5 for the future because you're not contributing to core, or whatever their specific outlines are for being part of 5 for the future. But this, you are contributing to it. But how much are you contributing? Oh, it's not enough. We didn't want 47 hours. We wanted 42 because that's the meaning of life. Or 50 hours, or whatever you kind of want to do. This is what is annoying for people, and probably really frustrating for anybody that's now looking on the outside that were thinking, I'd like to get involved with this, and as a business, I'd love to be part of it. But then you look at that and go, if I don't contribute enough, am I going to be the next person that's called out on stage in a WCUS in the future because I did 47 hours instead of 48 or 100 or whatever? And the final thing is, then they talk about When you look at Automattic and how much time they put into WordPress itself, the thousands of hours they put in, of course they're going to put that in there. They're going to vested interest. You go WordPress.com that makes money off WordPress. So yes, they're doing it and we benefit from it, but so do they. They benefit from it because they're a hosting company that bundles WordPress in the same way that WP Engine kind of does, similar. But they're making money as well. So they've got a vested interest in why they want to have contributions inside Automattic to push that aspect. Anyway, I've put that out there. You can come back at me if you want to. Imran, thoughts?
So what I'm going to say is when I did my video Saturday night, okay, it was Saturday afternoon and I was sitting with my wife and son, we were watching TV, and I had my earphones in. I just happened to watch the video because someone mentioned something about, did Matt just do this? And I went all the way over to the 7-hour mark and I watched the entire 1 hour and the Q&A afterwards. And I was so shaken by what he said and how he reacted. I know some of you are going to defend and go, yeah, but he did answer the questions and he said he spoke to the employees and he was listening to them. Give me a break, all right? Okay, I've worked in corporate world, right? I know a shit stirrer and a bullshitter when I see one. I know when people give you the, yeah, I've spoken to them and all of that, okay? I was so triggered by it. I was like, right, I'm going to go and do a video. And that's not something I would normally do, like a reactionary video. I don't like to do that kind of thing, but I went and did it. Because the things that really rattled me were, WP Engine are not the only company that use the word WordPress and make money. But you went after them. And there were employees there. And I really felt for the employees, the people that have come, that have probably said goodbye to their families, whatever, gone on a trip, train, whatever, airplane, they've gone there, they're having fun, they're mixing with people, and then you have that thrown at you. Even though he's saying, I'm here for you, I'm speaking up for you, I don't believe that a lot of the people there realised this was coming their way. And when you're in an audience and you're being singled out and you're sat there with WP Engine t-shirts, you're going to feel that small. And I just really felt for those people because I don't know them. I don't know how many of them are introverts, extroverts. I don't know how many of them are not very confident, imposter syndrome. I don't know. But for them to then have to go home, probably, with tears in their eyes, I really felt for them. And the other thing that really rattled me was this whole thing about the 3,500 hours per week versus the 47. I don't care if you've got 1 million and you've only got one, because surely it's about quality versus quantity. So are you now telling me, Matt, that those 3,500 hours are brilliant work? Because you didn't tell us what you get for the 47, because for all I know, you probably get something really good. And I just feel like, are we going to enter this world now, like you said, where we're going to start to say, well, Paul, you only put in 1 hour. Imran, you put in 0. 6-7 weeks ago when we did that live chat where we spoke about how WordPress needs to be improved and all of that, a lot of people quite rightly said, why are you not going to GitHub? Why are you not going to Slack? Why are you not going to the forums? And I very honestly said, because I really struggle with time. And a lot of people didn't like that, Paul. A lot of them said, that's a rubbish excuse. I'm really sorry. It's the goddamn truth. Because if when we get involved into forums, you can't just dip in and then disappear. If you start a conversation or you go in, there's a reply. You got to go back in. You got to engage. And then it goes on and on and on and on. And I feel like a lot of people that say, why don't you do GitHub? How many of you or them do tutorial videos? There's one thing about doing podcasts and live chats, and I know this is going to go out there now, so I'm really sorry if this is going to blow up in my face here. But there's one thing about a lot of people doing a podcast or a live chat, which ironically what we're doing. But there's another thing about some of us that also work in agencies. We work with clients. We create video tutorials. Don't tell me and Paul don't ram out tutorials all the time. We're doing stuff. We have groups. We manage things. If I could carve out more time to get involved into WordPress core and all of those GitHubs, I would. I promise you I would. But we can't, So does that, so that means that we probably put in 0 hours. But I just felt the whole 3,500 versus the 47, it just made my stomach churn, because all my life I've seen situations where people are judged on, well, you did more than them. And it's like, yeah, but that person that might have done 2 hours work in the office probably did more than you, who was in the office for a week and you just sat there clicking a button on a keyboard. But because you were in the office for longer, people will think, oh, they're a really hard worker. But that person there probably achieved a shitload more in that time. God damn it, we're on a proper rant mode, aren't we, at the minute?
Yeah. There's also the quality versus quantity thing. But to kind of go back to your point about the GitHub and so on, after that sort of criticism, which was justified, I can't disagree that people did have a point by saying it. But the flip side of it is that not everybody sees what goes on beyond those kinds of things. Like, for example, I know you've been invited, and I know I've been invited, and I've been on one with Anne McCarthy, which is one of the people behind, involved in Automattic and so on. And being involved in those things. These things take our time that we don't make anything for. But the one thing I will definitely say, I got the feeling, and I said this in my video, I said this in live streams in the past. Imran wasn't on this one, so I don't know if Imran's been on ones in the past. I think you have. But
no. Yeah.
One of the things that I kind of found was, it's like pissing in the wind. You kind of like, you don't know which direction it's going to go in, but you know it's just going to go and it's gone. And there was not at any point did I feel that anything I said or anything else that any of the other, let's say, WordPress sort of YouTubers, because we do have a lot of people around us that we listen to, users, other people in our circle and so on. We hear what a lot of these people don't necessarily hear. And when we talk, we don't talk just for ourselves in those kinds of environments. We talk for those people that maybe don't have a louder voice. We've got a platform, people ask us to come and get involved in these kinds of things. And the one thing I will say is, when I was asking questions, I kind of felt that any answer that was given to me was not the answer to the question I asked. And that kind of feels like what the whole situation is with WordPress, is that you can talk, until you're blue in the face, and people inside Automattic will nod sagely and go, yes, great points kind of thing. But nothing will change, because the course that they've laid out, the 3 or 4 stages, whatever it is for WordPress, with Gutenberg, full-site editing, now the collaboration thing, which is phase 3, those things are mapped out. And they're mapped out in such a way that there's no deviations around that to make anything that any of us say any more likely to happen. And that, I think, is the frustration. And that's why we do have conversations like this, why we do have live streams like this, because sometimes it's the only way to get this out into the ether and talk to people that are like-minded people that have the same frustrations, the same thoughts, maybe opposing opinions, which is always great, because it means it opens us up to different ideas, different opinions and so on. Might not agree with each other, but it's good to have them out there. But this is what I kind of feel like we don't get anywhere with this.
No, and I actually watched a replay, and that's why I've been a little bit on the fence about, I'm going to give up my time, I'm going to sit there. Is it going to... One of the things I hated about the NHS was meetings for meeting's sake. And I would sometimes have a day of about 7-8 meetings, one after another, right? And they were with different teams, hospitals, whatever. And what really got to me was, whenever I was in a meeting, I knew the people in that meeting had a view, a negative or a critical view, or they wanted to make a change or whatever. But when you're part of a corporation or you're aligned to something, a school of thought, you don't speak out. And I was always the one that used to speak out. And I used to make so many enemies, and people hated my guts, because how dare you say that? But it was because I was saying what a lot of them want to say. And I don't want to start attending meetings whereby I'll be the only one that says XYZ about Automattic or WordPress, and everyone else that might think or feel the same is going to want to protect their income, their salary, their back pocket. They're going to want to make sure that does not get affected. And that's why I prefer a bit more of honesty. I prefer that if you have a viewpoint or you want to say something, look, I do loads of Elementor videos, okay? I work, I'm friends with loads of them. But if something happens that I feel like they shouldn't have done that, I do say it. I will speak out. I will, do a video on it, whatever. Because I feel like to our audience, our subscribers, the people that have invested in us, isn't that what they want? So right now, I've got to be careful how I say this. Right now, I'm yet to see anyone who's employed or under Automattic come out and go, Matt, you shouldn't have done that. Now, I have heard that people behind the scenes, I don't know how true this is, that some people in Automattic wanted Matt to apologize. He refused. I don't know how true that is. But no one's come out and said it. No one has put it out there. And I feel like, so does that mean everyone from Automattic agrees with what happened? Whereas there are WP Engine people who've been very careful, and what they are saying is, I've come to work today and I love working for WP Engine. And I think a lot of them are saying that because we were told, and I feel like this is the bit that, again, grated me. When you publicly say, WP Engine employees have approached me, now in that company, people are going to start going, well, who said that? Was it you? Was it you? And that kind of paranoia that you kick off is not good. Because now you're going to go to work. There'll probably be a WP Engine meeting yesterday, like, on Zoom. There might have been 20 of them. And there's going to be someone looking there and going, which one of you dobbed us in? Now, I know that 10 of you were at WordCamp US. 10 of you were. So which one of you was it? That. Because I've been there in those situations, right, where I've spoken up about something and then people are like, who said that? Who spoke to Imran and told him about something that happened behind the scenes with so-and-so? Who told Imran that? And then people start, they lose trust with one another and, backbiting and all of that. And I just feel like, damn it, I don't know. I feel like we could dedicate a whole day to just talking about this. But I just feel like, meetings for meetings' sakes, honesty. If anyone from Automattic or works for Automattic or supports Automattic in any way actually feels that, Matt, you shouldn't have done this, grow some balls and say it. Stop worrying about, Matt ain't going to like it, I could lose my job. Because I'll tell you what, the amount of times I spoke up about my seniors in the NHS, and it didn't do me favours, but you know what? I know a lot of staff loved it that I said it because they wanted to say it, but they're afraid. You need to have someone somewhere that actually rises up and goes, no, this is wrong. Because isn't that the problem we have in life at the moment? When you think about all the things that you find out 30 years ago, so-and-so did this, but no one said anything, and someone was abused and no one said anything. And I'm not saying this is the same, but what always happens in society and life and workplaces is there's a problem, but no one wants to say it because they don't want to rock the boat. But you will not have positive change, evolution, development if you don't step up and kind of go, no, mate, this was wrong. You shouldn't have done this. And I feel like that's why I feel like if I go to this meeting, am I just going to be the one that sits there and people shake their head at me going, can't say that. And maybe I'll be afraid to say anything because I know I'm in an arena where everyone there probably will be like, yeah, WP Engine or shit kind of thing. I don't want people to see my face there and go, so you're supporting this kind of thing. Do you get what I mean, though, Paul? Or have I do. Complicated it a bit?
No, I get what you mean. People are afraid of rocking the boat, and I think when you see people that are in the public eye that maybe are seen to be representing the company, the product, the service, whatever it is, there is a fear. And I can imagine that, I don't know the people involved, but I can imagine that if you did speak out in some ways, some places will definitely go, they'll get you out of that company however they can legally do it. But there will be sort of selective ways of removing dissenting voices. So
Yeah.
Well, I want to go. I want to go back. It's been sort of like a little bit of sort of conversation going here in the comment section about the different amounts of money that companies have made and stuff like that. What I left on screen for a little while was WP Engine, and I think the comment that I think Case said, which was, is it actually trying to like it was? Bear with me. Let me just put it back up. It was actually Mark. Cancel that. Where's it gone? Is it wrong for companies to make money? No, this is the whole point. And this is the thing I don't get. And it kind of goes back to that whole thing of, if you look how much money WP Engine has made, and we use WP Engine because it's not a benchmark, it's just to do with the fact that this is in the news at the moment. There's probably hundreds of other companies doing similar kinds of things and making similar improvements in profit. But that's the whole point of a business. If a business is doing a good job, and again, I'm not talking about WP Engine specifically or any other company, but if a company is doing a good job providing a service that people actually find useful and valuable, more people will go on to that service and start to use it. So invariably, their profits will grow.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's how business works. Business is about making money. You provide a service or a product that people want or need or aspire to. Apple, a good example. And then you price it to what you think the market will sustain. And you keep, hopefully, innovating on that product or service, which means more people come on board, they're satisfied with the product or service, and then they tell people, and the word of mouth marketing helps, and all those kinds of things. So yes, of course, it makes sense. So if companies like Elementor, companies like WP Engine, Bricks, all those kinds of things, if they're making money and they're getting higher profits every single year, they're doing something right, whether you like it or not. They're doing something right. So, excuse me, is it bad? No, not at all. It is basically, that's the way business works.
Yeah.
Sure.
Can I just throw something in here? So obviously the whole commotion was kicking off about how much profit WP Engine make as an example and how many hours they're putting in. Let's just say I went and created something and I made $1 billion next week because it was the most amazing thing for WordPress. Let's just say, all right, and it can happen. Things can go viral and, amazing things. Maybe it's like a, Gangnam style kind of product for WP, whatever, WordPress, right, and it takes off. Does that now mean I have to put in 3,500 hours because it's just me? I'm the company. It's just me. I made $1 billion. I doubled what WP Engine are making. Is that the argument? Because that's how it feels. And so many people are latching onto, but WP Engine are making so much profit. If WP Engine only made $10, right, you wouldn't care. You'd let them use the WordPress hosting. You wouldn't care. But because they've made so much money, and that is just a nasty way to work. That's a nasty way. Because you know what that says to me? That shows jealousy. You don't like it that someone made lots of money. You don't mind if they only made $50 or whatever and they're just getting by. You wouldn't care then. But because they're making so much more than you, now you're jealous. And that's how it felt. That's literally how it felt. And I'm just going to say, though, the analogy that so many people have said is a good analogy about the farmland. And if you all use the farmland, it's going to be rubbish. That farmland is finite, right? The tragedy of the commons, all of that. A park, it's finite. There's the park. It doesn't get any bigger. WordPress is not a park, right? It's not going to, at the it can grow, it can develop, it can, whatever. So people need to stop saying, but the WordPress will become an infertile land. No, it's the wrong analogy. It doesn't work like that.
Fair enough.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. But I think Fat J has a good point. Honestly, maybe it's just me, but why WP Engine needs to put money in? Again, I think this goes back to, where was it? It's the moral question that Graham was saying. That's where the moral question comes in, though. But you can't... bear with me 1 second, because I need to pull this up. Just bearing in mind that the Bill of Rights from WordPress themselves is the freedom to run the program for any purpose, the freedom to study how the program works and change it to make it do what you wish, the freedom to redistribute, to distribute copies of your modified versions to others. The whole Bill of Rights, which backs up what WordPress is all about, is basically giving you free reign to use the program how you want to. If you want to modify it, you can do it. You can use it for any purpose. So WP Engine's purpose is to provide it as part of their hosting plan and dedicate their hosting to WordPress only. They're making profit out of it. Why is there a obligation? This is business. This is business 101. There's no obligation. If I made, let's just say I make £1 million today, because apparently I'm a millionaire. If I made £1 million today, I'd have to pay my tax to the HMRC in the UK. I'd have to pay my national insurance and so on. Whatever's left is mine. Why would I have to then give it to the software that I use? They chose to make this free and open source. If it was something like Elementor or Bricks or any of these where I pay an annual license, let's just say for unlimited sites. So out of that £1 million, I've got £600,000 after I paid my 40% tax, roughly. Well, then I've paid, let's say I've got 1,000 licenses and that cost me $200 per year for Elementor. If I've made that £600,000 profit from Elementor that I've paid them for, why is that any different to if they turn around and said, okay, we now make an Elementor free, but you're obliged to give us money because we've made it free and open source? It's the cake and eat it. The moral is fine, but if you don't care, why should you feel obliged to put it in? If you kind of feel like, I like to give to charities, I want to give to, for example, Cats Protection League because you're a cat lover, it's a choice you make. But then the next person that might also love cats goes, I don't want to. I want my money for myself. I've worked hard for this. This is my money. I don't want to give it to a charity. How is that any different? A moral obligation is one thing, but it's not legal.
No, it's like all the free tools we use. So there'll be people that use the free version of Canva. I use Publer, the free version. There's all these things we use that help my business in terms of marketing or reaching new customers, and then you make money or whatever. I don't contribute anything back to Publer or, or other social marketing tools. And I just feel like it's just such a rubbish argument to say that because you use it, you make a profit, you've got to give something back. It's just, I don't get it. I just think and another thing I just want to mention, so it's come back to me now, is can someone please let me know in the comments, did WP Engine declare that they paid $75,000 to sponsor WordCamp US prior to Matt declaring it? Did they announce it anywhere? Because I don't know if they did. And if they didn't, because he was very open, he goes, hey, if you want your sponsor money back of $75,000, you can have it. Was that actually public knowledge prior to Matt putting it out there? I don't know. Maybe someone can tell me. Because if it wasn't, why would you do that? Why? Why declare? Because surely things like what you pay, isn't that meant to be like between you and the sponsor and everything? Should you really be declaring that? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. So Graham, to kind of pull back of what we said, is it not in their own interest to help continue developing it? Well, the question you have to ask yourself is would it not be developed if they didn't put money in? Because it is being developed and is not maybe paying that $75,000 that Imran just said and creating free tools like, well, not creating, but supporting and developing, continued development of the tools that they provide for free. Is that not contributing to WordPress? Because let's be honest about it, ACF is still the most widespread and widely used sort of meta-fields custom post type plugin that's out there, to my knowledge at least. Contribution comes in many, many, many different ways. And I want to pull back up before we go any further on that, because there's a question that Morton asked here. Have you ever donated to WordPress? If not, will you consider doing it since you make a living using WordPress? First of all, have I ever donated to WordPress? No, I've never donated financial amounts to WordPress. But what I have donated to WordPress and to the WordPress community is over 1,000 free videos to help people be able to work on WordPress and make livings for themselves. So if that isn't giving back to WordPress, the project, and the open source nature of it, well, I don't know. But I don't feel like I've got an obligation because my contribution is to the ecosystem, in the same way that I've got the issue with themes and plugins and so on not being included in this 5 for the future kind of thing. There's more ways you give back than just putting your hand in your pocket. If they said for every single site you developed on WordPress you'd have to pay $10, fine, do it. Most people wouldn't care less because they charge you more for a project than that. Go on, Imran, you're dying to say something.
Yeah, all I'm going to say is what I would say, Morton, I respect the question, but whenever you play music on YouTube or you're in your car and you got radio on, do you then pay the band? You're playing music, you're getting it for free, probably through your radio or whatever. Do you then pay the band because you're enjoying the music? Or you're at a party and you've got a playlist. Do you then pay all the bands that you've played and enjoyed it? You don't, do you? So just because we use WordPress, I've never donated, but again, I've done over 2,000 videos. All the stuff we do and all the courses we do. And like when someone wants to build a website, the client wants a website. They haven't said how. I could say, we'll go with Wix, we'll go with Squarespace, we go here. No, I tell them to go WordPress. They want WooCommerce subscriptions. I go, we could use and I sometimes say, look, for ease of use, just go the WooCommerce subscription. They go get the license and whatever. So we actually do steer people that way. But something I did just want to mention, I've gone and lost my page here, about, the contribution. That 75,000 that WordPress engine gave for WordCamp US, that must have paid for a heck of a lot of stuff there. Not everything, but it would have contributed immensely to the setup of that event. And just because they only do 47 hours, we don't know what those 47 hours are. Just because like someone else does 3,500 or 100 or 200, we don't know what the value is. And I personally feel that if you got everyone to give 3,000 hours, there comes a point when you have too much. Right? You're going to have forums where there's messages every second, every minute. Someone's got to read all of them, read all the comments. How do you moderate? How do you manage it? How do you react? There comes a point where you have too much, too many chefs and all of that. So I don't know what they do with those 47 hours. I think I would have loved to have known more about that, where they do get involved kind of thing. I think someone wrote on here that Elementor give 80 hours. I don't know. What is the value of that? And like I've said before, just because someone else puts in 3,500, or that's the joint contribution, if it's their product and they are managing, how many of those hours were actually good hours? How many of them were people moderating? How did he get to that number? Right? Because if those hours were based on people that sit there and just make sure the system is running, I could argue and say, well, 40 hours a week or of that 3,500, was that real value? Whereas the 47 hours that WP Engine put in, that was actually real contribution. And then you could argue, well, what is contribution? What is not contribution? So it's really easy to throw numbers. But for me, it's like, break it down, explain what they were kind of thing, So I just feel like, I can't remember what I was talking about. About the hours, the contribution over what they do. I just feel like, anyway, look, move on. I've lost myself. I've lost my train of thought.
I think the train pulled at the station hours ago, but we'll leave that one. Where's the point that I just saw, Derek? Okay, so ACF isn't the same as a charitable contribution. It benefits WP Engine through customer acquisition more than core WordPress project. You could kind of argue that point, though. I mean, there's probably more people that use ACF free because it does so much without the need to go for ACF Pro, but also is a tool like ACF which then makes it viable to use WordPress as a platform to build something that you couldn't do before. Is that not acquiring customers for WordPress itself? Now, you've got to look at the sort of the big picture when it comes to supporting WordPress, and donations is one thing, but you're always going to get a struggle with donations. So as sort of been brought up a few times, in different sort of things, is, well, maybe there could be a tax on plugins that are on the plugin repository, for example. You want to list yourself in the WordPress plugins, then you pay a small annual fee to be listed there. Maybe then that would also get rid of all the plugins and things, the tens of thousands of plugins that are on there, but the ones that are not maintained, supported, or updated. And if you've got a premium plugin, and let's just say, for example, you had a plugin on there and it was $10 a year, Most people could afford that $10. Now imagine how many plugins are actually on there that if $10 a year was put out there, how much money that could generate, but also clean up what is a bit of a mess of a place, with lots and lots of unsupported plugins and plugins that haven't been touched in God knows how long, all those kinds of things. I don't think there's no solution. There's no one size fits all solution. There's lots of things that you can implement. I mean, anybody that's in business these days, and I'm sure, Imran, you attest to this, and most other people, is that unless you're employed, if you are one source of income, you're already in a tenuous position. Yeah. So you put yourself in a position where you ultimately have multiple revenue sources. So, for example, memberships, courses, YouTube, sponsorships, advertising things, all those kinds of things. So you put yourself in a position where there's multiple smaller streams coming in. Well, surely Automattic, we'll say Automattic with the WordPress project kind of thing. Actually, let's just say the WordPress org. Surely there's got to be ways in which they could implement it to actually generate small amounts of income, but from multiple different sources, if that makes any sense. So maybe there's ways of doing that so you don't monetize the platform, as in WordPress stays free, but you monetize some of the things that are around it. If you want to have a plugin listed there, you can pay $10, $50, whatever it is, or you can just have it on your own website and not have the exposure. It's like advertising in your local pages on Google and so on. It gives you wider exposure to a bigger market.
I've been saying this for a long time, in that Automattic need to re-sort out their whole WooCommerce add-ons. So you can have a WooCommerce Pro, and it's like maybe it's $199 or $99 a year, and you get all of those add-ons, or you bring the price down. Why do so many people go and use other third-party add-ons? And there's always an element of risk. You need to make sure it works really well with WooCommerce, because subscriptions is $299 a year. If you made it something like $20 or $30 a year, and that's easy to pass on to your client, and they're going to go, yeah, fine, I'll do that. The amount of people that would start using it, because then they know that this add-on is built to work with WooCommerce. Yeah, I know you can use YIF and other stuff, but there's always an element of risk, okay? Because you want to make sure it works perfectly well with Woo and all of that. So they could easily change their model. And I tell you now, so many more people would pay for it, kind of thing. But, they could have a donate option. They could say to every WordPress user, okay, you know what? Even though it's a free open source, if you could contribute $1 a year, so it's open source, but if you, out of the goodness of your heart, could contribute $1 a year, that's $400 million for them. That they could reinvest in getting the developers, in getting the team to do what they want to do without relying. Because I've always felt that, the minute someone says to me, right, you want to be part of this club, or you want to whatever, you want to work with us or whatever, you've got to do X, Y, Z. And I feel the pressure, like I've now got to do something, but contractually, I don't actually have to. That annoys the life out of me. So I just feel like they could generate income, right? But I'm not saying income for profit. You reinvest that to then get the support and the developers. So you're not relying on companies. Because I always feel like, WordPress are here and they want to get to there. But now they need other people to parachute in. Otherwise, they're not going to get to where they want to be. But then that means you're never going to get there unless you get commitment from people who are always going to come in. And you can't use that as an excuse. And the thing I just want to end on is it that with things like Etch and other things coming on the scene, but it's just rattled Matt and some other people, and now they're looking to blame. They're looking to say, because you're not putting in enough, we can't get to here. So you need to put in the time and the hours. Whereas I feel like you should never, as a company, I do not rely on Paul. I do not rely on my cats. I do not rely on other people to make my videos, to do what I want to do, to create my course, to increase my business revenue, to do what I want to do with clients. I'm not expecting you. right? Unless we have a contractual obligation, that's different. But if I want to get from here to here, I map out what I want to do and I do it. What we have at the minute with WordPress or Automattic is they want to get to here. They want to shift, but they need outside help. So what happens if WP Engine go bankrupt and lose all the stuff? What if Elementor go bankrupt and lose all the stuff? Does that now mean that, oh no, we were relying on them, we're stuck? Well, no, you as a business should have been investing your money. And don't tell me Automattic don't have money. You should have been investing your money to do what you want. Then if you want to get outside's opinion on stress testing or checking that we're in the right direction, that's different. But to say that, you know, to evolve, the whole nourish, evolve, learn and all of that, to say you've got to do that on the reliance on other people, that is a bad business model. That is basically saying that's not a business. You know, that just means you're going to be stagnant, because people sometimes, look, Paul, you could maybe give them 10 hours this week. Next week you may have 0. What does that then mean? They're going to come to you and say, Paul, where are you? You gave 10 hours last week. Why did you not give 10 hours this week? You're going to say, I'm busy. No, Paul, we were relying on you. You know, you're probably going to turn around and go, I can't. But then you're made to feel guilty. The whole guilt trip. You know, we were relying on you, mate. You know, you give me a lift to work. You know, I know your car's broken, but you need to give me a lift to work. Get an Uber.
I'm going to rename this live stream after to the Imran show.
I do get carried away.
That's right. I'm going to end the thing, like I say, I think we've kind of gone on half an hour longer than I said right back at the beginning of the video, the live stream. So, but Graham, to answer this kind of question, or to sort of bring up on this point, you bought the pro version software, even though you didn't necessarily need the pro version, but morally I bought it because of how good the free version was. And that's good. And we've all done the same kind of thing. But the thing is, you weren't obliged to. You weren't contractually obliged to. You chose to because you wanted to contribute and put some money back in because you appreciated what they'd done. That's great. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And, you know, if WordPress had something like that, you kind of felt like, okay, this is doing what I wanted to do and it's brilliant, blah, 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 then you might be more obliged to put into it. But the question that I throw that back out to everybody else is, and the points that sort of are brought up, how many people here in this chat, and we've had over like 120 people in at times, how many here have done the same thing? How many of you have gone back in and actually donated to the WordPress project? How many times have you gone on there and thought, actually, I just built a website for a client. I've just made $5,000. I'm going to go and put 50 quid in or 100 quid in, and I'm going to support the WordPress project. Would I look at you any better or worse that you did or didn't? No, because it's a choice that you've made. You weren't obliged to. There was no contract in place, and no one said to you, if you don't do it, I'm going to stand up on stage and I'm going to publicly humiliate you and everybody you know, your family and everything else. And I think that's part of the problem here, is that the way it was handled, we're not saying that WP Engine or any other company couldn't or shouldn't do more. That's not in question. But the fact of the matter is, they shouldn't have been publicly humiliated right at the end of it all. If there was that beef was there, maybe they should have said to WP Engine, thanks for your $75,000 and to become a super sponsor, but we don't want it. And while we're at it, there's a little bit of an S-storm coming your way after this WPC US. But they didn't. They handled it in such a way that wasn't very good. Regardless of your thoughts of WP Engine, the company behind it, or anything else, I think the overall overarching thing that most of us think is that this should have been handled privately, separately, and not on a public forum in front of a televised audience, because it wasn't just the audience in that room, it was televised, it was live. It was a bad way of doing it. No matter what your beef was, it should have been handled in a more professional manner. That wasn't. That was like throwing your toys at the pram, and I'm going to shout you down, I'm going to make you all look stupid and feel stupid because I've got an issue with whatever the issue was. I think that's the ultimate take on it. Anyway.
Yeah. Just two things I'm going to say. Sorry, just two things I'm going to say about that is that, yes, you've kind of given a solution, which is we got this normal WordPress. if WordPress do go and develop some of the things we're saying, like custom fields and post types and all of that, that's where you have the WordPress Pro. So the normal one is free, maybe $10 a year. Loads of people would do that. We get the extra and we get $10 a year. We'll pay that. And the second thing I wanted to say was the optics with Matt and what he did with doing it publicly. That is one of the reasons why, and I'm saying it now, why I don't feel excited about going to WordCamps. Because the talks, how many of the talks there are actually educating, teaching me how to build a website, better business, getting clients, doing things efficiently, methodically, CSS frameworks, da-da-da-da-da. I don't want to go and sit there and listen to someone talking about farming the land kind of thing. There's country programs I could watch, on Sunday evenings if I really want to learn about farming the land. So, I feel like you've kind of hit the nail on the head with a possible solution here with where we get the more advanced version of WordPress, whatever, $10 a year, $1 a month. I don't know, whatever you could. Make it affordable, but also they get their revenue stream.
And on that note, we'll call it a day.
Yeah.
Imran, before we round things up, how can people find out about you? And if they're interested in your course, how can they find out more information about that?
Right, so after today, I'm pretty sure you're going to have to go onto a police website and see what date I'm due in court for everything I've said today. But hey, look, just do a search for Imran Sadiq on Google or YouTube, Web Squadron. You'll find my YouTube channel, videos, working on the latest version of the Elementor website course due out on the 10th of October. But hey, I'm always putting out videos. I think me and Paul are kind of like, we're trying to ensure that we flood your timelines as much as we can at the moment. But you can find us on YouTube.
And remember, that's websquadron.tm. Just a joke. Anyway, thank you so much, Imran, for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. It's always been fun to have a chat and just have a rant. Thank you, everybody else, for joining in, asking questions, having different opinions, same opinions. Just having an opinion is always a good thing. I'm going to say thank you very much. We'll see you all again whenever. I have no idea when it's going to happen. But enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe wherever you are and have fun. Take care, guys.
Take care. Bye.